Monday, July 15th, 1895, Mark Twain's first lecture in his Around the World tour, Cleveland, Ohio. He writes of it in a letter. There were a couple of hundred little boys behind me on the stage, on a lofty tier of benches which made them the most conspicuous object in the house, and there was nobody to watch them or keep them quiet. Why, with their scufflings and horseplay and noise, it was just a menagerie. Besides, a concert of amateurs had been smuggled into the program to precede me, and their families and friends, say 10% of the audience, kept encoring them, and they always responded. So it was 20 minutes to 9 before I got on the platform in front of those 2,600 people who had paid $1 apiece for a chance to go to hell in this fashion. I got started magnificently, but inside a half an hour the scuffling boys had the audience's maddened attention, and I saw it was a gone case. So I skipped a third of my program and quit. The newspapers are kind, but between you and me it was a defeat. There aren't going to be any more concerts at my lectures. I care nothing for this defeat because it was not my fault. My first half hour showed that I had the house. I could have kept it if I hadn't been so handicapped. He gave a second show on Tuesday, July the 16th. Wednesday, July 17th, they boarded the Great Lakes steamer Northland and headed for Sault Ste. Marie. Sam called it an ideal summer trip. Major Pond writes, "Our party left Cleveland for Mackinac at 7 o'clock. Mark is feeling very poorly. He's carrying on a big fight against his bodily disability. All that has been said of this fine ocean ship on the Great Lakes is not exaggerated. Across Lake Erie to Detroit River, Lake St. Clair, and the St. Clair River, a most charming trip. Mark and Mrs. Clemens are cheerful today. The passengers have discovered who they are, and consequently our party is the center of attraction. Wherever Mark sits or stands on the deck of the steamer, in the smoking room, dining room, or cabin, he is the magnet, and people strain their necks to see him and catch every word he utters." Pelee Island, Ontario, part of a township of 9 islands. Middle Island, Middle Sister Island, Hen Island, Big Chicken Island, Little Chicken Island, Chick Island, East Sister Island, and North Harbor Island. Middle Island is Canada's furthest point south. Because of the mild climate, perhaps the mildest in Canada, the island supports vineyards, and a wine industry began here in 1860. The ship docked at the Detroit pier for passengers to embark or disembark. Sam was interviewed by a reporter from the Detroit Journal who wrote, "There was one striking figure in the crowd of a score or more persons who stood on the forward deck of the big steamer Northland as she drifted up to the dock at the foot of First Street yesterday at 4 p.m. It was that of a man past the middle age of life, with bushy gray hair that fell well down upon his coat collar, a mustache of the same color that was inclined to bristle, and a clear, ruddy complexion. He leaned carelessly over the railing and looked down upon the people assembled on the dock, without displaying any curiosity or interest that was evinced by people who were looking up at him. This man was Mark Twain, the humorist, christened Samuel L. Clemens, and father of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Mark's last visit to Detroit was 11 years previous. He was on the tour with George W. Cable. The steamship was the second of two ships. The first, named the Northwest, was launched in 1894, and after test runs came to Buffalo to be finished and furnished. According to J. A. Colby and Sons of Chicago, their company designed the furniture and upholstery for both liners, using mahogany and primavera, or white mahogany, in Louis XV Rococo style. The company described its decor thus: "When we think of the traditional shiny white cabins we have known so well, this symphony of brown, bronze green, and gold, with the delicate carving and relief work, repeated through such an imposing length of space, all softened by the light of amber-tinted glass, is a marvel. Staircases of white mahogany with tessellated floors, and upholstering of terracotta leather, huge plate mirrors, balconies furnished in antique brass, reading rooms no less luxurious, ladies' parlors, men's cafe, smoking rooms, little conservatories, bronze and marble statues, a dining room like a prince's banquet hall, and staterooms of every conceivable shape and size here." The Northwest weighed 2,339 tons, was 385 feet long, 44 feet at the beam, and 34 feet from keel to promenade deck. Its hull was painted white, the three smokestacks painted yellow with a black band near the top, the center stack having a white star and the letter N to signify the company. Its two quadruple expansion engines generated 7,000 horsepower. It had a regular speed of 20 miles per hour with a 16-foot draft. Its two propellers were 13 feet in diameter. The ship consumed 8 tons of coal per hour. When the Northwest steamed full speed up the Detroit and St. Clair rivers, its huge size created destructive wakes and shore damage. The ship was subsequently obliged to reduce its speed in these areas. By 1895, the Northland had launched, identical to the Northwest, except for refinements possible with the newer ship. Both ships maintained service of every 3 days between Buffalo and Duluth. The regular stops were Buffalo, Cleveland, Detroit, Mackinac Island, Sault Ste. Marie, and Duluth. Sam was full of praise for the Northland and said there wasn't much about the vessel to remind him of the days when he used to pilot a steamboat on the Mississippi River. "It is the best I have ever seen," he said, "in the way of passenger boats. The Fall River steamers are more elaborately decorated, but are more like ocean steamers than the Northland, and not so pleasant and comfortable." Although the British built Fort Mackinac to protect their settlement from attack by French Canadians and native tribes, the fort was never attacked during the American Revolutionary War. The entire Straits area was officially acquired by the United States through the Treaty of Paris in 1783. However, much of the British forces did not leave the Great Lakes area until after 1794, when Jay's Treaty established U.S. sovereignty over the Northwest Territory. During the War of 1812, the British captured the fort in the first battle of the conflict, because the Americans had not yet heard that a war had been declared. In 1814, the Americans and British fought a second battle on the north side of the island. The American second in command, Major Andrew Hunter Holmes, was killed, and the Americans failed to recapture the island. Despite this outcome, the Treaty of Ghent of 1815 forced the British to return the island and surrounding mainland to the U.S. The United States reoccupied Fort Mackinac and renamed Fort George as Fort Holmes, after Major Holmes. The fort was used as a prison for 3 Confederate sympathizers. John Jacob Astor's American Fur Company was centered on Mackinac Island after the War of 1812 and exported beaver pelts for 30 years. In the middle of the 19th century, commercial fishing for whitefish and lake trout began to replace the fur trade as the island's primary industry. Following the Civil War, the island became a popular tourist destination for residents of cities on the Great Lakes. Much of the federal land on Mackinac Island was designated as the Second National Park, Mackinac National Park, in 1875, just 3 years after Yellowstone was named as the first national park. To accommodate an influx of tourists and sport fishermen in the 1880s, the boat and railroad companies built hotels, including the Grand Hotel. Restaurants and souvenir shops sprang up as a way for island residents to profit from the tourists. Many wealthy industrialists built summer cottages along the island's bluffs for extended stays. And now that the federal government has left the island, all of the federal land has been given to the state of Michigan. Fort Mackinac has become Michigan's first state park. July 18th, Thursday, the Clemenses arrived in Sault Ste. Marie and checked into the Hotel Iroquois. Sam gave his talk at the Sioux Opera House.